All right, let's get started. So today, just first of all, thank you for everyone attending. I think we are in webinar number 5 or 6 in this series. The days and nights seem to drag on here through COVID as we're kind of contained in our homes. I have 2 special guests here today with Team Life, and their motto is anyone can be a hero. I have first James Schatzle, president and founder of Team Life, and also Christine Schmoker, who is a regional sales manager I think in New Jersey, and you also are based in New Jersey. So what we wanted to accomplish here today, and again, thank you everyone for attending all of our webinars, or if this is your first one, we greatly appreciate you tuning in. Today, we've had several webinars that have touched on multiple aspects of reopening, disinfect and protect, layouts, flow of equipment. We've covered off air, a number of other things. We're kind of at the point where we've got a good compilation of information that we wanted to review. So if you go back to our previous webinars, you can get more of an emphasis or an education on something specific. But today, we're going to cover a lot of information, and I'll just preface today with, if we go over, and there's a good chance that we will go over the hour here, this will be recorded, and we're happy to share the presentation and the recording with everybody. But we wanted to review everything that we've talked about in the past with reopening considerations. And then one last critical thing, as we want to, obviously, what are all the considerations as Heartline and being best in class designers, procurers, everything that's involved in this fitness amenity space. Here's another great consideration that I really feel a lot of times we overlook, and it may be mandated in your state or it may not be, but critical life-saving tools and equipment that really should be the norm and in every single fitness center. So we will be covering AEDs and really the impact of that and the new kind of norm with the thinking of how important it is to have an AED given COVID-19 in your fitness center. So without any further ado, I'm going to start the webinar. When we get to Q&A, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to load your questions in. And again, we will keep going probably over the hour to answer all these questions, and everything will be recorded so that you can come back, or you can obviously contact us. We're happy to answer your questions. So let's get into it. Opening considerations, disinfect and protect, signage, design, and flow. These are 3 bullets that we've been covering over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Opening considerations, 4 bullets here that really stand out. And one obviously is, understanding CDC. We don't really have a whole lot of governance over the fitness center. So it's really up to us to interpret what CDC says and how that fits into our space. And 2 of the things right off the cuff that we all know is social distancing and protecting, the air in and out of our lungs with masks. So these are highly recommended. You should be doing these in your fitness spaces to create that distance and to also cover your mask during phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Again, there's going to be other interpretations of local, state, federal, and CDC guidelines of what we can do next. But right now, as you're reopening, we want to ensure that we have a safe and inviting environment. So I have another story that I've always kind of told on these webinars starting off here, just to set the stage with what we're dealing with in the fitness center, because it's a unique environment. We're not outdoors. We're not in an amenity space, and there's a lot of air circulating, things like that in some of these other facilities. We're usually in a tight, confined space. And sometimes the equipment is packed in there. It's designed to maximize that space, which today is obviously changing. When we're exercising, right, there's a benefit we're trying to achieve, right? Cardiovascular. So we're trying to improve, the conditioning of our heart and also the conditioning of our lungs. The thing you have to understand in these spaces is we have an elevated heart rate and we have an elevated respiratory rate. The elevated respiratory rate is the one that I'm focused on in this story, which we have about 1.5 liters to 2 liters of air that we are expelling and inhaling every time we take a breath, okay? So with that in mind, if you think about a smaller space, and this story leads into a few other points that we're gonna make in this presentation, if we have an asymptomatic person, you can start to put the pieces together here with what I'm talking about. We are actually, with a mask or without a mask, can very quickly contaminate a smaller indoor area very quickly. So with that in mind, there's considerations and precautions that we're talking about and taking here to help, minimize the risk that we have here and eliminate the transfer or the infection of obviously the virus here. So masks, social distancing, understanding that increased respiratory rate, we're pushing in and out a lot more air than we normally would. And that's significant in these fitness centers. Wiping down the equipment before and after. So applying, a disinfectant wipe to make sure before you exercise, you got a good clean piece of equipment, and then wipe it down for the next person. Having a 30-day supply, even a 45-day supply of these types of wipes and hand gels in your center is highly recommended. They're challenging to get a hold of now, and as we see things kind of open up, that demand and resupplying of those wipes is going to increase, and they're going to be harder to get. Right now, Heartline's experiencing 4 weeks to get wipes. We obviously are ahead of this and have shipments that are continuously coming in. But if you haven't started to put in your orders for these types of things, do it now. So 30 to 45 day supply, and also look at the solutions that you're using with these gels and the hand wipes. I'm going to go into it a little bit further in the next couple slides, but there's certain solutions, disinfectants, that aren't necessarily good. They can actually be harmful for the equipment on the finishes and actually the electronics. So refer back to your manufacturer's recommendations. But I will tell you, hydrogen peroxide, things with ammonia, alcohol, and bleach, typically no, they're corrosive. You could short out electronics or really damage finishes, bearings, and things like that, that long-term, they're not going to hold up to these types of harsher corrosive chemicals. Your layout and limiting the number of people in the facility. Again, some of this goes right back to CDC guidelines. How will you control this? Will you use a key fob? Do you have some sort of electronic sign up? In your layout, can you provide a waiting area for people so we're not getting congested, in the aisleways or behind people that are, currently using a treadmill? We don't want to create anxiety in this space. So the more we can plan on how it actually operates, the better. So controlling hours of operation, controlling your layout, controlling access. You've got 2 doors, 1 door, things like that. We want to limit the exposure for things to just be, all over the place, but create a controlled, safe, inviting environment. Last bullet here is really, again, understanding the environment. And this virus, I know we've heard from 3 days to 3 hours, 9 days. There's a lot of things that are out there with how long this virus actually lasts on a surface. And most of the infection is coming from the airborne water droplets, but it can be transmitted through the surface. So in the fitness environment, it's important to understand these last 2 bullets here of 42 hours on metal and 72 on plastic. If you look at the picture we have here, we have a ton of metal and plastic with fitness equipment. So again, depending on the areas that you're having to understand and disinfect, I could tell you in the fitness center, here's another unique scenario where we've got materials where the virus can actually last longer than maybe some other areas that you're concerned with. Opening considerations. Okay, so there's a lot of bullets here, and there's things obviously to consider that may not be up here because every fitness center is unique. Your demographics are unique. How many people are using your facility, obviously unique. But towel usage, it's simple, right? We're sweating, we go like this, we breathe on it, we lay it somewhere. Don't do it, right? And it's an inconvenience where you are providing a towel service and it's expected. Wait till you get to phase 2 or phase 3 and it really feels okay or better to do that. Right now, it's one more thing that you're going to have to manage to. You're going to have to disinfect. You're going to have to take precautions. If they bring it in, right? And then they take it with them. That's better. But if you can eliminate it altogether, just let it fall to the ground and we'll clean it up later. It's better not to have one more thing that's possibly spreading it all over the machine where it may have just fallen on the floor or the belt and there's one place to clean it. Changing clothes, if you have this opportunity and you're comfortable opening up locker rooms and showers and things like that, it's questionable. We've talked and we've had American pools in our webinars, and you have to have bathrooms and showers available in the pools. We don't have to have that for the fitness center. So this is more of a judgment call and how much time and money you want to spend on disinfecting another area. But if you can keep them open, or even if they're not open and people can bring a change of clothes so they enter the center with clean clothes and leave the center with clean clothes, again, you're taking a precaution that you've been in this environment, could possibly be infected, and now you walk through, 5 other rooms, hallways, whatever it may be, with all those clothes on. So look at those considerations to see if you can take even more precautions. Next 2 bullets here I'm going to pick out are rebounding in your next move and really state and federal changes. So I always, focus on this one and planning your communication. Okay, so this situation changes, every day, depending on the environment that you could be talking about: pools, fitness, other amenity spaces, legal stuff like that. The more you can prepare now with your plan, with how you will react to it, how you will communicate to your residents, are all the things that you should have done now or be almost 100% complete, right? And prepare yourself for a rebound. If something happens in your fitness center where someone was sick, what are the things that you need to possibly announce or not announce? What will you do to close and disinfect and then reopen again with reinsurance to the members that it's okay, and maybe you've taken additional precautions? So running through this, with a committee, your boards, people that have an understanding, obviously Heartline, of what are the things you need to consider here. Prepare it now. When something happens, people are going to want to know very quickly, and they want to know that you had a plan and had time to really consider it, and aren't hastily kind of reacting to things. Moving the equipment around, obviously social distancing. If you can move, bikes and easy things like that outdoors and it makes sense, yeah, do that. Outdoors is better than inside. And if you can open up windows and ventilate and things like that in your fitness center, obviously do that too. Signage, gym rules, social distancing, locations of wipes. The story with the wipes, you don't need to overcrowd the fitness center, but the advice here is don't have your wipes at the other end of the room when they need them on the cardio machine, right? So signage of how to wipe it before and afterwards, and then some sort of convenience of being able to get to those wipes without, crossing people's path or too far across the fitness center. So most of the fitness centers that are smaller in the amenity space, 4, 5, wipe stations usually is a recommendation in what we're seeing to accommodate this type of level of disinfectant. Last bullet here again, and communication is key. You're hearing in any of the webinars here. Don't just type up your rules and your guidelines and how you're operating in this fitness center. I highly recommend that you hold a webinar or even do an orientation. We're very excited and we're very passionate in the fitness world. And when we get to exercising, we kind of lose our mind and track of, the rules and the regulations and all these things. But if we've been through kind of a dress rehearsal or orientation, we're more likely to remember, yeah, I got to wear a mask, or this is one-way traffic. Wipe down the equipment before and after. Wait just in this area. Don't stand behind Joe on the treadmill over there when he's got 10 more minutes left to run. So the more you can communicate and the better you can communicate with other sensory type things, tone, body language, showing some empathy, encouraging people, inviting them back in. These are all much better ways to get compliance and ensure you're creating that safe and inviting environment in the fitness center. So next we have the Disinfect and Protect program. So, Heartline's really designed a 3-step process here. One is a process that we've always done, and we've always cleaned the equipment, and we've always done preventative maintenance. Why this is important now, and we're not just spraying and disinfecting and protecting, is there's stuff that accumulates inside these treadmills: dust, dirt, virus, pathogens, bacteria, things like that. We want to get this out. If you're just spraying on the outside, as soon as you turn on that treadmill or elliptical, there's the chance that that stuff comes flying right back out, right? And we're talking about microscopic type things. You can't see it. Let's get it out quarterly, right? Because it does accumulate in there. Let's disinfect, really would be the step 2. And granted, you're doing your own disinfectant. We're going to be applying a disinfectant that's the proper disinfectant for the fitness equipment. And then 3rd step is really in between that disinfecting process. What can we do to protect the growth of pathogens on the surfaces and also eliminate the transfer on that surface of, the pathogens, the viruses, the bacteria, things like that. So we've designed a 3-step process to basically provide as much safety and assurance that the equipment is being maintained properly, and we're doing everything we can to disinfect and protect while you're using it. General cleaning guidelines can be found at ACSM, which is American College of Sports Medicine. You can just Google it. This is your baseline, right? You should be doing these in any type of gym facility, and then let's build on top of that. The considerations really to think about with the fitness center and the disinfecting that you may be doing outside of a professional service, like the 3 steps I just talked about, you're going to want to clean it every day, if not more, okay? So this stuff is going to land on the floor. You might want to discourage people doing push-ups and things on the floor, things like that in certain areas, but clean it up, get it out of there, do more of a deeper clean regularly with your own, maintenance or janitorial services that you have come in. So let's move on, because the next 2 slides really go into a little bit more depth on disinfect and protect. And it's important to understand what we're actually doing here with disinfection, okay? There's a lot of terminology out there, and people will say, I'm cleaning it, I'm sanitizing it, I'm disinfecting it, and the ultimate would be sterilization, like you see in a hospital with surgical type tools. What you want to make sure you're doing is disinfecting, okay? Sanitizing is not going to kill the virus, and that term gets used loosely a lot of times. So make sure that you've got an EPA approved. You can go to the NList. EPA's got a website for this. You could type in the products that we're using or the products that you have someone else using, and make sure, 1, you've got the proper disinfectant to kill off the virus, and then 2, make sure you're using a disinfectant that's not going to harm the equipment, okay? And if you're not sure, right, you can ask them to kind of stay away from the equipment, and we'll have a professional service come in and treat the equipment like what Heartline is doing. But you don't want to spray hydrogen peroxide, ammonia, bleach, alcohol. These types of things can damage the sensitive equipment. What we're using here, Heartline, is a 1-step quaternary disinfectant. Okay, it's not going to damage your finish. It has a 10-minute dwell time. And it may seem strange, and you say, Jeff, why 10 minutes? There's stuff out there that kills in 5 and 3 and 30 seconds. Well, the science here really is the faster it kills, the harsher it is, okay? And again, we don't want to get into solutions that are corrosive and harmful to the fitness equipment. So we've gotten behind a 10-minute dwell time, needs to stay wet for 10 minutes to fully disinfect, gets wiped down after that, and then we apply our protectant that gets us through the next 90 days. So do your homework on this, whether you have Heartline in there or you have someone else. Make sure you're using the right chemicals. And if you hear something with kind of a quick, kill time, that should send up a little flag of caution to do some homework there and make sure it's going to be safe for your equipment long term. The last thing we want, because we're reducing, in a lot of cases, 50% of the equipment that you could use in the past due to social distancing, you don't want a treadmill to go down, right? And you don't want a $5,000 treadmill you have to replace because you short circuited a touch screen or a lower board or something like that with solutions that are conductive and that can do damage. All right, so antimicrobial protection. This is really a science that's been around for a long time, and it's relevant here today. We are able to put on a solution that lasts 90 days, and again, this ties right in with your quarterly maintenance that creates like these microbial spikes, if you can think of it, and you can kind of see it in the picture here. But as the contaminants kind of come down and they're attracted to this negatively and positively charged kind of barrier that sits on the surface, it punctures that membrane, right? And it either, if in the case of bacteria and things that grow, you're killing it off, right? And there's at a microscopic layer, you could see the carnage, and your normal disinfectant's going to get rid of that. But in the case of viruses and these other pathogens, you sometimes have to break through a lipid layer or an outer coating to get to that piece inside that really is harmful, right? So these spikes are doing that same type of kind of puncturing that membrane. It slides down this, molecular structure and eventually disintegrates the pathogen. So you can see that in kind of the diagram here. This is a hospital grade type antimicrobial protection. It is shown to reduce like normal hospital cleaning protocols, which are typically way up here compared to what everybody else is doing, by 4 to 1 on the head count of ATP, which ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That's another story. But that's how they measure how much has grown over a period of time with the protectant or without the protectant. So hospital grade type solution that we're able to apply to the fitness equipment to, eliminate and reduce the transfer of these pathogens. All right. We did a great webinar on ATMOSAIR, and it's a solution that we're getting behind here in trying to inform and also supply to our clients. This is, if we've got 3 steps, this is the 4th step, okay? The last area in the fitness center that we really haven't focused on is the air, right? And like I said early on, this is where most of the infection and the contamination is coming from, right? It comes from the air and then it settles on a surface. With ATMOSAIR solutions, we're able to, on the supply side, okay, this isn't the return that comes into the filters and we're filtering out things, okay? That's more of the grab and catch type concept. This is kind of seek and destroy, where we're supplying a positive and a negatively charged ion airflow into the room. And what happens with this is you have these ions attacking the VOCs, the pathogens, the viruses, the particles, the hard things in the air that naturally in our environment, and this is where the mountain fresh air story comes from, you have more ionization at higher altitudes, right? At lower altitudes, there's less ionization in the air and the air doesn't feel as clean, right? There's more pollutants. Now we take it inside into this smaller space, right? We're breathing more air in and out, right? We really need to focus on what we're doing with the air. And in this slide, you can really see, the to the far right, that block in red, those are the measurements, for inside air, right? And then the far right is mountain elevation air. And that is the level of ionization and the air quality, okay? So with this product, we're able to ionize that air in the fitness center and actually anywhere, any air inside, to have more positively and negatively charged ions in this space, which again, I'm going to jump to the next slide here. This is what's helping us combat the virus, okay? So what these ions will do, and you can see in this diagram, we are attacking the virus on the surface and in the air, and we're basically kind of diffusing the bomb, right? So we can get through these membranes, go inside there, oxidize what's going on. That actually, once it gets into a mucous membrane, that's what causes all the damage. If you pick this up, it's already been discharged. We've eliminated it. You're not going to get sick, okay? So huge benefit in this type environment if you put everything that I've, put together with the airwork spelling, confined environments, right? We've got to attack the surfaces. We've got to attack the air. This is the fourth step that really creates an environment that we can feel comfortable in. There's no silver bullet and no 100%, right? And it's very hard to know if you do get COVID-19, where did you get it from? But I can tell you these types of measurements being put in place, you're covering to the best of your ability, okay? And again, here's just a quick, it's a very easy install. It's not a super expensive technology here, but these tubes go into your supply side of your HVA system. It's a quick install. It's very inexpensive. And there's a huge impact to what this can do, even outside of COVID. The air that you're breathing in an environment where you're breathing in and out more, right? We should have this anyway. All right, so last thing really kind of to validate the ionization is this is a part of major sports, hospitals, buildings. I just wanted to demonstrate one here with sports because it's relevant in fitness, but SoulCycle has this in 50 locations. The Staples Center, they saw a 20% reduction in their HVAC costs and a 90% reduction in their VOCs, which these are the contaminants that are in the air. So they put it throughout the whole entire stadium, So great technology. I think it covers off everything that we want to be concerned about in the fitness space to disinfect. 3 steps with disinfect and protect. Let's get the air in. And then we've got a great environment now to battle COVID. And then coming out of it, gosh, it's an even better, healthier, environment to exercise in. All right, so design and flow. These last few slides, I'm going to go fairly quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Team Life. But we've put some examples, and our team of sales reps is engaging all our clients here to really, let's redesign these spaces. We have to for social distancing. We need to get more gym wipes in here. I encourage you to contact us to run through this layout and help you plan for how you will orientate people, relaunch your fitness center. But we will do the layouts for you. Okay, this is a new design here, somebody who hasn't opened yet, so we're supplying extra outlets for when they can, increase the amount of equipment. This next diagram here really is an existing facility, right? So we've got a number of units with the X here that they're not going to be operable. You can take them out of the space if you have storage. You can unplug them. You can put a sign on them. Again, what I recommend is don't make your fitness center look like a war zone with tape and signs, right? You want it to be inviting. You want people to feel safe in here. Control the flow of people so we're not colliding in aisleways. If you have a one-door entrance, right, maybe there's a sign that says yield to people coming out or people coming in. Think through all these different scenarios. If you can have a waiting room inside, probably better to have it outside, but if there's only 5 people, 10 people that can be in your fitness center, you need some communication to make sure people understand that. So come to us. We're happy to help and redesign this, whether it's an existing space or you've got something new that's opening up soon, and you need some more considerations for now and for later. Signage, we're providing some of it here. There's tons of it on Google. But if you need help with some of these things or you want us to modify any of these, we're happy to help you there. But I would say go to Google. It's kind of the same place we've gone, and we've built a few of these on our own, but there's tons of stuff out here, and make it your own. Again, make it inviting. You can see the one sign here, welcome back. We're happy to have you return, right? And let's all be safe and conscious of how this facility operates. So with that, I'm going to switch slides here, and we're going to get Team Life kicked off, and then we will come back for Q&A. All right, Jim, the show is yours. And again, I know we may be killing it here with time, but we said we would. So have at it.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. And I'm glad that everybody's with us today. A little about my background, just like many of you, the proudest thing I do every day is take care of my 2 sons. I've been involved in the emergency services field for quite some time, coming up to 40 years. starting as an EMT, firefighter, and then building up as a paramedic. And I still do that once or twice a month. I had the privilege of getting my education from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I interned at Hopkins and Shock Trauma Center, always knowing I was going to come back to my home state of New Jersey to work my career. Very early in my career, I got frustrated. So I had all this education, all this equipment ready to bring to the patient, but then all the way up to today, the problem is from the time of the event to the time that I get there. For a lot of emergencies, that's okay. Even something serious as like a bad twist of an ankle or even a fracture, why that's serious and we want to take care of you, the patient's going to do okay if I get there in 5 minutes or I get there in 15 minutes. There's other emergencies that we're going to talk about, much more important. So life can change absolutely in the blink of the eye. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that anyone can be a hero with basic equipment and basic supplies. Next slide, Jeff. So a lot of times we have to make sure that we understand the difference between heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest. So a heart attack is more of a structural problem. That would be more of a blockage in a coronary artery that's going to decrease oxygen to a certain part of my heart, and it's going to produce pain. If I have signs and symptoms of a heart attack, I should stop activity. I should call 911 and enter into that system. Thank goodness I'm conscious, I'm breathing, my heart continues to beat, and I need some intervention. Again, we have some time there, but we want you to enter the 911 system very quickly. On the other hand, a sudden cardiac arrest is an electrical problem wrong with the heart. Our natural pacemakers that beat our heart suddenly don't work in the order we want them to. And that's a sudden collapse that now instead of several minutes to enter into a system, we really need to do something within 3 minutes. Next slide. So what happens every day? This is really the loss that takes place in the United States, and you can imagine these numbers are much larger worldwide. So 1,000 people a day. It happened yesterday, it's happening while we're doing this webinar, and it will happen tomorrow. 1,000 people will go into sudden cardiac arrest. And I'm not talking about the 102-year-old that their heart stops beating today. We kind of know why it stops beating. It's been beating for 102 years. I'm talking about the somewhat healthy or completely healthy individual that their electrical system in their heart stops working, they collapse. Out of those 1,000 people that this will happen today, only about 5% will survive. That's disastrous numbers. If we put some of what we're going to talk about into an effect, that number is completely different. Next slide. Sudden cardiac arrest also affects all different people. This particular very scary slide, I wish I could tell you that this was some actors that just set up into a gym, but it's not. It's a 20-year-old that was on a rowing machine, that was healthy, that was working out, that went into sudden cardiac arrest. This one, thank goodness, has a good ending. This one, she survives. You may see at the top of her head is an automated external defibrillator that was in the gym with people that were confident enough to use it, applied it to her chest, and after one shock, and after, of course, going to the hospital, finding out she had an undiagnosed medical condition, had some surgery, and she's going to do quite well. So it is the #1 killer of athletes. Under 18, I gave you that number, 365,000 people a year die, 7,000 of them are under 18. Next slide. So what's the solution here? If it's an electrical problem, we know how to correct that. Those of you who know how to read EKGs, you can see that this is not a normal sinus rhythm. Even if you don't read EKGs, you can see that this is just a bunch of squiggly lines. There's no coordination if I'm looking at that as a heart rhythm, an electrical heart rhythm. So 80% of people that go into sudden cardiac arrest, it's that problem known as ventricular fibrillation. How is that corrected? With rapid defibrillation, ideally with under 3 minutes. Next slide. So as we mentioned, out of these 1,000 people today that will go into sudden cardiac arrest, the majority of them, 80%, will happen outside of the hospital. So it's all about getting access to the patient. Sometimes, you know, even my response times as a paramedic, I have about 3 different computers in my ambulance. So we get dispatched, I hit a button in my computer, GPS sends it that I'm responding. I pull up to a building, guess what I do? I hit I'm on location. So maybe that took me 8 minutes to get there on good days, by the way. Now I need to gain access to that building. I need to many times get into an elevator. I need to get to the place. There's another key fob that hopefully somebody's standing by. If not, I'm knocking on there. So just as Jeff talked about preparing for things and thinking through things, this is one of those. We need to prepare for emergencies. So if I dial 911 on the 20th floor, because that's where my gym is located, is there somebody that's going to be able to get me through 3 steps perhaps before I get to the patient there? You can imagine the higher up, the more restrictive I am to get through, the more difficult it is. This includes parks and recreation. I love some of the walking trails and running trails that I go on. Some of them are miles long, and now I'm really further even from the entrance of that park. So all these considerations we need to put into effect. Next slide, please. So statistically, we know from studies, this is from the American Heart Association, every minute that goes by that somebody is in sudden cardiac arrest, that they don't have CPR performed on them, and even more important, have a defibrillator applied to their chest, they have a 10% less chance of survival. So in my office here, if my heart stops suddenly during this webinar and I collapse, people would see me on the screen, notify my office, they would get the AED off the wall, they would have it on my chest within 60 seconds. I have a 90% chance of survival. If I stop and I get gas on the way home and my heart suddenly stops, I'm sure I can kind of almost guarantee that that gas station probably doesn't have an AED. They'll dial 911 and minute by minute by minute goes by. Now I'm closer to that 10 and really that 5% chance of survival. Next slide. So this goes to the response time. So you can see on the bottom, it says average ambulance response time. This is countrywide, by the way. Of course, there's lots of variables from traffic to weather to are you getting your primary unit, or am I on another call and now you're getting a secondary unit, which believes me happens very often. So the average response time in America for an ambulance is just under 12 minutes. But remember, that's skewed a little bit. It's arriving up to the scene, and now I have several minutes sometimes to get to the patient. And that horrible red line that I look at is survival rates of sudden cardiac arrest every minute that goes by. Next slide. So what does an AED? Does it really make a difference? And there's a lot of things I have in my life that could work, maybe work. We know this works. So the national average is that 5–7% survival rate. So if I get an AED applied to them and they're in a shockable rhythm, which means I've got it on them probably within 3 minutes, we're at a completely different survival rate. So this is time tested. This isn't guessing. These are hard statistics that we know are in place now. Next one. So we know that sudden cardiac arrest, cardiovascular disease, is absolutely the #1 killer in America. So what do we want people to do? Take better care of themselves. Something I need to remind myself every day, including my fitness regimen and how I eat, how I keep my stress level in place, which I think you're going to learn a little even more about in the next webinar from Heartline. But we want to know that this does happen. So we need patients treated within 3 minutes. So we just need to start thinking and getting these things in place. Next slide. Now we're in this world of COVID-19. So what does that mean for me in my 911 world? It's very different. It's been very, very different in my almost 40-year career. And I've been through, just like many of us, we've been through some really tough things, from natural disasters to some other pandemics, not as large as this one that we've been through. But my response time is even more. I also am treating some patients that were pretty healthy and suddenly aren't. We know that this disease is not just affecting people's lungs, but we've seen studies that it's affecting their heart now. So because of this, we need even more people to make the responsible decision that while we're doing our best to take care of everybody, this 911 system, it's completely taxed right now. It's completely pushed to its limit. So maybe we can take some extra steps where we can take that responsibility, because we know we're in a little different place now. Next slide. So talking about the heart. So we've really talked about sometimes a hesitancy of people performing CPR, and what's happening with these out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. With an automated external defibrillator, if you're not familiar with them, in my opinion, in this tough event of a cardiac arrest, it is the easiest part of the rescue. So if you've had a CPR class a week ago or 3 years ago or even more, but you have an AED with you, as soon as you turn the AED on, it has step-by-step audio voice prompts to give you. The AEDs that we like even tell you how well you're doing CPR with feedback, such as if I'm not pressing hard enough there. So having an AED available, turning it on, will bring you right back to instructions like you had a CPR instructor right next to you. Next slide. So let's look at some of these other numbers in this COVID-19 that is taking place here. So 58% jump in the number of cardiac arrests in one study here. That's happening in a very short amount of time. We've all read, we've all seen, and unfortunately, I'm sure some people that are on this webinar today have had some very personal effects of what's going on, even immediate family members there. The hospitals are completely taxed there. So what's going to happen in the next several months? What's going to happen as we start reopening? We just need to be prepared for those at that point there. And I also mentioned the longer response time that's happening there. So what do we need to do? Simple steps. First of all, we need to have an AED that's on site. There's also some things that we'll talk about maybe in a future webinar about some really better first aid kits than what some of us probably have grown up with. Having an ice pack and a few Band-Aids is really nice, but a complete system, something else to give you instructions, is the best way to go ahead and get you ready in the event of an emergency. Those of you that have been around parks and recreation and amenities and fitness field, if you've done it long enough, you have a story. So if we can just be ready for that and hope the next story doesn't happen, but if it does and the outcome, we give it the best chance of survival there. The passion that I have for this is just tremendous, because family is why. I say that to everybody I work with every single day. We do this because we want to prevent bad things. Next slide. So what are some of the important features of an automated external defibrillator? It's an interesting piece of equipment. I want you to have it. I want you to put it on the wall. I want you to never use it. You may use it the day that you hang it on the wall, or it may be years before you actually need it. But when I do need it and I take it off that wall or from the storage place that I have it, I need it to be working. So dependability is so important on an AED, and the ones that we endorse have that dependability. We want it to be easy to use, that step-by-step that we talked about. As a medical person, myself and my medical director wants the most advanced technology in medicine that's out there in the AED that's used. We want to make sure that you put yourself with a company that knows all about the liabilities and takes all the laws that we have in place and just make sure we fulfill all the requirements of those laws to give us the best liability protection. And with any product, you want to go with a best-in-class type of company that gives you complete customer service, not just from the initial purchase, but from as long as you need it for. Next slide. This is just a little teaser of kind of a first aid kit. Looks very different from any first aid kit you've seen. The most difference is in the middle that you can see that there's an app that goes along with it that gives you step-by-step instructions on how to use that equipment, both for injuries and for illnesses. So as I said, that's something else that we'll be able to talk to you about hopefully in the future. Next slide. Christine, you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Make sure to mute. There you go.
Okay. Christine Schmoker. I'm located here in Colts Neck, New Jersey, not too far from Team Life. And I was hired to handle business development for New Jersey and beyond. I have some experience in property management and connected with Jeff And we saw a great fit together with AED programs and the areas that Jeff covers with fitness and pools and managed communities. So we're here for you. We are a company that is very customer centric and able to address any questions you have at any time. My contact information is listed here. If you would like to reach out and come up with any additional questions we can address.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Christine. Wonderful presentation. I'm going to switch slides here and just want to give you all a preview of what we've done in the past with 3 Sages and what is coming next week. So again, we want to do a full presentation on the 3 Sages Sips of Wellness app. There is an interesting product, and I'm got it on the screen right now. We've kind of dripped it in there a couple other places, but haven't really talked too much about it. But there's an interesting product that is coming to market with 3 Sages outside of the app. And it's really allowing us to have that complete approach that we talk about, with Heartline being the fitness and wellness experts. Okay, so we don't want to be known as just, hey, you need a treadmill, you need a bike. And I think you can kind of see that from this webinar, where we're taking a comprehensive approach to, consultative solution type selling and providing that best in class amenity space here. So, from the flooring to the products to how stuff looks on the wall to the air to the preventative maintenance, and really with the wellness side of it, the story that's here is 80% of our population does not have a gym membership, right? And that's actually less now because all the gyms are closed in most of the areas. So if you think about how do we help the people that maybe just aren't into fitness, right? Or can't do certain things, this is an incredible opportunity for us to promote wellness and health and a healthy lifestyle to all those people that just maybe aren't into experiencing the fitness side of it. So, again, we want to embrace the whole fitness and wellness experience, and 3 Stages is a huge part of that for us. The mobile app is what we've focused on in the past, and we will continue to focus on that in the next webinar. But please join us next week for this. We're going to switch over to Q&A, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of that for right now. So without further ado, and it looks like we're doing okay on time. Let's go to some of the live questions. Should high-rise communities have AEDs in more areas than just a fitness or pool? So Jim or Christine, if you want to take that one.
The general rule of thumb with AEDs is that they should be within 3 minutes reach, because the patient suffering from cardiac arrest needs to have attention within that 3-minute time frame in order to have the highest success rate. In a high-rise building, that becomes more challenging because of things like elevators and doormen. There is some legislation underway, and I believe, Jim, you could correct me on this, specifically with hotels here in New Jersey, where they're suggesting that you need to have one on every other floor, just to address that issue of being able to have one within reach in a short enough amount of time to make a difference.
Wow, great question. Thank you. I'll answer this one. It's fitness related. What are the costs and HVAC savings associated with ATMOSAIR? So, costs can range, 85 cents to $1, depending on the system. Obviously, there's a kind of scoping out the work on any of the fitness centers, but very inexpensive. I mean, fitness centers and amenity spaces, they're not 5,000, 10,000 square foot gyms in a lot of instances. So this is a very economical way and proven way to attack kind of what's going on with the air and the viruses and the pathogens in that space. So your cost savings, as I mentioned with the Staples Center, they saw a 20% reduction in their bills. So, you're having cleaner air come back into that filter, so less changing of your filter, and less electrical power if you've got cleaner filters pushing air, right? So just some simple physics there with how the savings is coming through. Great question. Let's go to, got another one here from Mr. Ben Bash. If your gym has been closed for a while, won't all viruses be dead? Why clean and sanitize before you reopen? Great question. I've had that one before. Yes, hopefully your virus is dead in there. Now is actually the safest time for us to get in there and do the maintenance, right? And while we're there, do the disinfect and protect. The protect is really the key piece to get you through the next 90 days. But if you haven't had a preventative maintenance, yes, everything's probably clean in there. Get us in there to make sure your equipment's going to, work properly, right? You may need some help moving some equipment around and some layouts and things like that. But the biggest piece here, to be honest with you, is show that you have done something. Just don't open it up, right? There's probably dust, there's probably all kinds of other stuff in there for the last 45 days that maybe nobody's ever touched, right? So it needs a good cleaning. Get the maintenance, get the disinfect, get the protectant done. Now you're going to be able to present that to your residents, to your owners. Hey, this is what we've done to get the fitness center ready and prepare it for, an inviting, safe environment for everyone. Great question. Question from Stephanie, and this will be for Jim or Christine. Are there portable, this is actually for me. Sorry, I thought it was for me. Portable AEDs. Let's go to one for you guys. Can I use a AED on a child or an infant?
Great, I'll take that one. So the American Heart Association breaks age groups into 3. Anybody above 8 is considered an adult. Between 1 and 8 is considered a child, and under 1 is considered an infant. In the AED world, what we do is that anybody that's over 55 pounds. So a good general rule is anybody that's in school, like kindergarten above, is probably over 55 pounds. Absolutely, there's a first grader out there that's 50 pounds because they're just small at that time. But the majority of them are going to be over that. So they would get the adult pads applied to their chest. If you have children all on a regular basis under 55 pounds, you should have pediatric pads with your automated external defibrillator. You unplug your adult pads, plug in your child infant pads, and apply them to their chest. The Heart Association goes on to say that if you have a child and you don't have child pads, by all means put your adult pads on, because you can't make anything worse than somebody that's in sudden cardiac arrest.
Fantastic. Couple questions here, and one will be for me and one will be for you guys. For Donald, when will Heartline begin performing service again? We've been at it for the last 3 weeks, depending on the area. We cover Maine and Miami, and we have operations in Chicago. So we are out and about. Just you can call us at this number or help at Heartline Fitness, and we can take care of you. So we are out performing the service, the disinfectant to protect, and actually doing installs. On our installs of new product, I haven't really mentioned this in the webinars, but we're actually able to disinfect at that point of time and put the protectant on. So if you're opening up a brand new fitness center, we've got you covered there, even if you don't open up for a week or 2 or wherever it may be based on your location, right? We can get you ready for that with brand new product too. Second question from Donald here is, I always thought you had to have a trainer in order to use an AED. That's not true? Question mark.
There you go. That's a kind of something that I love to talk about, is that many years ago, and of course, a manual defibrillator needs training on that. Automated external defibrillator is that A part, that automated part. The best feature about an AED is it will not allow you to shock somebody that doesn't need it. It's an impossibility. So if I pass out from low blood sugar and you forget, hey, are you okay? Can you hear me? You forget to check breathing, take the AED off, put it on my chest. My heart doesn't need a shock. It can't accidentally shock me, nor can you override that. So legislation out there right now says, and there's almost, well, every state has a liability law that says if you're in good faith trying to help somebody, you're covered. And because the AED is so smart, it can't hurt anybody, it can only help anybody. We would prefer you to have CPR training because it also covers choking and the steps of CPR. But if you're untrained, it's public access. You take it off the wall, turn it on.
I would add to that, Jeff, that I have twin 11-year-olds and I had the equipment here and just told them, okay, pretend this mannequin is a real person, open the AED and figure out what to do. And without any help, they were able to do it and execute the CPR. And as they used the ICPR pad, it instructed them if they weren't pushing hard enough, deep enough, or quick enough, and they adjusted how they were doing it. It's extremely easy to use.
Wow, fantastic. I'm going to throw one more at you here too. How long does the AED last? What is the maintenance?
So we love people having AEDs, but what we really need is we need rescue-ready AEDs, and we need people confident enough around to use them through education like we're doing today. So an AED does have some maintenance to it. The pads that go on the patient's chest need to be changed every 2 years. There's a gel in there that sticks to the patient's chest, conducts electricity without burning the patient's skin. That gel, because it's gel and has some water in it, eventually dries out. That's why if it isn't used within those 2 years, need to be replaced. It's an unbelievable battery, right? The power system is a non-rechargeable power system that lasts 4 years. After 4 years, it comes out, the next one goes in, and you're good for another 4 years. But because there's these separations of 2 years and 4 years, preventative maintenance is important. We know what needs to be done. So Heartline will have a system to go ahead and make sure that those pads and those batteries are replaced when they're needed to be replaced.
Awesome.
And the AED itself has a rescue ready indicator on it that if for some reason there was an issue with one of those important components of the AED, the indicator would turn from green to red and there would be an audible beep. And you would know that something was up that needed to be addressed. At that point, you could open it up and walk through the steps, or if it was purchased from us, there would be information there with a phone number. You'd pick up the phone and reach us and somebody would answer the phone. You wouldn't get a recording, you'd get a person on the other end who then would guide you through addressing whatever that particular issue might be.
Awesome. And I think, you know, there's probably another thing to kind of explain here, how this actually works if you're purchasing an AED through the design and the layout with Heartline Fitness, and it's included in your package. Team Life, you know, your company, and Jim or Christine, you explain it, but there's an entire support system here to maintain these AEDs so that, you know, it's easy, right? It's a frictionless process, and we're reminding you, we're taking care of it, to not have it, you pull it off the wall, it doesn't work, right? You're going to be notified to ensure that these things work. So maybe we touch on that one in a minute here too, but I got a couple I just wanted to answer. So Bob asked about pools. Bob, what kind of cleaning needs to be done on pools before opening? Fabulous question. I can connect you with Ben Bosch. We also have a webinar that we did with American Pool Enterprises on our Insights section on our website, which goes through all of that. So there's a lot to be done with pools to reopen. And even if you may not be opening, continuing with that maintenance to ensure that you don't have a health issue, right? There's a lot of crazy things going on underneath those covers, and we need to understand them. Another question here, are treadmill, Stairmasters, and cycle machines are all wired underneath conduit in the flooring? How can we potentially move these to handle social distancing? So in that case, you may not want to move them, right? You may just want to put a nice sign on there that says, this machine, you know, is not to be used because of social distancing. You know, 6 feet either way, and use the machines on the side of it. There are ways, you know, in the case of a bike, it could be self-powered, right? but there may be a switch. Treadmills, ellipticals, things like that, if they're powered, we can remove power cords. But I think the easiest way to do this is put a sign on there that doesn't, as attractive as you can make it, right? But going through that communication and those orientations of like the ones that have the signs, don't use them, right? It may not be possible in some cases to move your equipment or take it out. And honestly, you don't need to, but if you can, there's a comfort in knowing there's nothing in between there rather than a machine and potentially you're doing a 5-mile run going 6 miles an hour right now and somebody hops on next to you, right? And just ignores the sign. That's not a good day right now. So good question, and thank you. Let's go to another AED one here for Team Life. Just a second. Okay, good one. Aren't people afraid to use them because of liabilities? What if an accidental shock, if it accidentally shocks someone?
Great. So just to kind of add on to that, it can't shock somebody unless they need it. Remember that our government has done a great job, in my opinion at least, to make sure that people aren't afraid to use that AED that's out there. So there's so many layers of protection for people like you and I that may use an AED. As I mentioned, each state has, even before AEDs were invented, they have a Good Samaritan law. All right, most of them were from the 60s. They say if you see somebody that looks like they need some help, you have good intentions, you're in good shape there. Along with that is when AEDs started really hitting the market in the late 90s, each state came up with a public access defibrillation law, which specifically says with good intention, you use an AED, you have liability with that. And remember, you're putting on to somebody that's in the worst situation they can be in. They're unconscious, they're not breathing, their heart's not beating. You can only make it better, you can't make it worse. Then there's a federal law that's called the Cardiac Arrest Survival Act, and then there's an indemnification law from the manufacturer. So there's layers and layers here of immunity, and you can only make it better, you can't make it worse.
Great. Another question for you, Jim or Christine. And I know with this question, depending on the state you're in, and in most pools, it's required that you have an AED outside in case of something happening. Is there a weather-tight housing to store an AED to place near the pool or outdoor activity areas that are away from the clubhouse?
So we're really fortunate to be able to we have AEDs in every state and even internationally there. So we deal with a lot of different environments, from some that are warm all year to others that really have some weather concerns. The heat really isn't too much of a concern. It has to be over 122 degrees for 24 hours straight. So we really don't have that issue really anywhere in the country because it gets cooler at night, obviously. But the cold is a problem. So now we have these all year round cases that have to be hooked up to electric, that when it gets real warm, it provides ventilation to keep the AED in the 70s. And when it gets cold, the heater comes on, and again, it keeps that at its temperature. Under 32 degrees, sustained for 24 hours, that AED, that gel that I talked about in the pads, will eventually freeze. So we do need to keep it warm, and we really don't want it to get super hot. And since it's an environmentally controlled case, it just needs to be hooked up with electric, keep it out year round. It's working great for our pools, our recreation, our ball fields. Right outside my office where I'm doing this, where I'm speaking from, there's an AED that covers all the buildings in this business complex. I'm in New Jersey. It's been out there for years. And it's fine in the winter and the summer.
Great. Question here, and this one's going to throw me into a little bit of a physiology answer, but how do we regulate mask wearing during cardio regarding CO2 return? So I'm assuming the question is, we're wearing a mask, right? And we're not getting enough oxygen back in. And I will say first, it really depends on the patient or the exerciser, right? And is that, anything with COPD going on and they already have a limited capacity to transfer oxygen to, the blood cells to go to organs and all these other things. So If that is the case, I would say there may be a concern. If that is not the case, most of the masks that we're wearing, and I'll be honest with you, the amount of air that you take in and your ability to deplete all the oxygen that's in there, and then what you push back out, it's not 100% CO2, right? That just wouldn't work. It would be toxic inside of you if we converted it that fast, first of all. So a lot of what comes out isn't just like you're breathing into a paper bag and after 10 breaths you pass out type thing. So you're not going to trap that CO2, and the masks are permeable, right? They're going to allow you to bring that fresh air back in, and depending on the mask that you have, like it's getting out above your nose and into your eyeglasses and things like that. So there's not much of a concern. The other thing that I will tell you, and maybe it's a challenge, right? But there are athletes that train for high altitude, and what they do is they put on a mask, right? And you're talking about marathon runners, athletes, football players, things like that. They make high altitude training masks to actually limit the amount of air that they can get in, right? To create this type of effect. So again, I don't think you're going to have an issue with anybody for the most part, but if you do have someone potentially has a, COPD or some sort of, lung disease, things like that. And, on the pulse ox, they're not as saturated in their blood. There may be a concern there, right? And it may be that during phase 1, or if we get rid of masks at the end of phase 2, they need to walk outside, right, to get their exercise and possibly not wear a mask because it's just not conducive for them. But that's a wonderful question. I haven't had that one before. And thanks for the opportunity for me to fall back to my physiology education. It's been a while. Let's go to an AED question here. I saw another good one in here on, do you recommend installing AED if it is an unstaffed private fitness center? Great question. We have fitness centers in our office buildings and they are only available to the tenants.
That's an excellent question. So think the different in ages of the people that are listening. You're going to either grew up with AEDs and it's just part of your life. All of us grew up with fire extinguishers as part of our life. We never really questioned it. Maybe we had some training on it, but there's been enough general knowledge about them that, heaven forbid, I saw a small garbage can fire and I know I don't need to immediately evacuate. I'm going to take the fire extinguisher, pull the pin, and squeeze the handle. I've known that my whole life. So this is what's happening now with the generations that people have had AEDs in their school. They've had it in their health classes. They've seen it so many times on television and medical shows and all those types of things. So it's public access. We need to start thinking of these as simple. It's a first aid kit on the wall. It's a fire extinguisher on the wall. It's an AED on the wall. So I think that's a great, I would tell you that the tenants would be able to use it just as well as I am as a 40-year paramedic. Turn it on, but they have to have one there to be able to turn it on.
Awesome. Let's go to, I've got an ATMOSAIR or an ION question here. So one had to do with pricing and one had to do with portability. I'm pretty sure there are portable units out there, but really you want to, for the expense that this is, you really want to secure it into a unit that runs with your air circulation and based on the cubic volume that you have in the space. Portable, I would caution there is you have a unit that's going to cover it properly, right? And are you wasting time or overkill with what the portable unit was? And then for cost, it really, you need to scope it out, right? But in general, we can probably go above 85 cents a square foot and below 85 cents a square foot, depending on the space. But that's kind of a good ballpark. If you had 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, again, you can see fairly inexpensive for what we're accomplishing. And when you start to get into, 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, fitness centers, that's not the norm in an amenity space, right? They're usually a little bit smaller than that. So, You know, clubs can be from 15,000 square feet to 150,000 square feet. But again, what you're getting for the price of it and some of the other solutions that I've seen out there, one, it's simple, it's going to work, right? You're not providing solutions and chemicals and all these other things that squirt stuff into the air. This is a natural approach with ionizing the air that you would get, you know, like on a mountaintop. So two really good questions. And this question, I think we answered in our slides. How often do we do the disinfect and protect, and why 3 steps? So again, we're doing it quarterly. You're going to need to disinfect, obviously, more than that in between your operating hours and at least once a day. Fall back to ACSM guidelines for that base of cleaning and disinfecting. Why do we have 3 steps? We don't want to just spray stuff on the equipment, right? Even if it's the right products or not. There's stuff inside here, but the treadmills, the ellipticals, the bikes that you need to get out, you need to clean, you need to calibrate. These are all manufactured recommendations to support your warranty. So our protectant lasts 90 days, and that's basically what's in the EPA studies and approval. So it lines up very well with the quarterly maintenance that we're doing. So PM, disinfect, protect, you've kind of hit the reset button, and then you're doing your ongoing cleaning and disinfecting on your own for those following 3 months. Okay, let me see if I can find another AED question. Design, layout. I think we've covered them all off, Jim and Christina. If you want to, you know, maybe just wrap up with, you know, three of the key takeaways during COVID-19 here, and the importance of having an AED in your fitness center. I think, you know, it's been overlooked, and I will say, you know, by a lot of fitness professionals out there. You know, are we offering this? Can we sell it? Should we be putting it in our design? Absolutely. But, you know, given COVID, I think there's some heightened awareness and attention that needs to be given to these types of devices.
Well, Jeff, first of all, I just want to thank you for having us today. It's been a real pleasure. All the interactions that we've had with you and your company are professional and friendly, and make me feel confident of any of the gyms or pools or recreation facilities that you're overseeing, the things are being done the right way. So I appreciate that. You know what? It takes a lot to shake me. I could go on for another webinar about some of the things as any paramedic and any emergency room worker has seen and done and heard and smelled. But for some reason, I'm a little more shaken lately in this time. And because of that, I want to start this reopening of the world as I want to know that the places I'm going in have thought through some things and care about me. So why an AED was never meant to be a public relations the management issue, it is. I go in and right off the bat, when I see an AED in a facility, I'm like, wow, they care about me. If I'm an employee in that facility, I'm really glad because I'm there a lot longer than just for a 50-minute workout or something like that. By the way, I would love to do a 50-minute workout. It's something I did 10 this morning, so I got a ways to go.
Come see me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a big takeaway, is that I want people to feel more secure. And planning these out, and heaven forbid this emergency takes place, I receive a number of phone calls a week. The toughest one that I receive is, Jim, it happened. We weren't ready. What do I do now? It's a very different phone call than, if this happens, I want to be ready. So that's my takeaways from today. Awesome.
Fabulous. Well, I truly thank you guys for helping us present here on this important topic, Jim and Christine. We're going to wrap it up here, but you know, we've covered a lot. We've summarized the disinfect and protect. There was a question about who do we contact for layout help, information like that. You can call us direct. You can email us at help@heartlinefitness.com. We have several sales reps and people capable of doing this up and down the East Coast and in our operations in the Midwest, Chicago. but facility signage, design, if you're in need of wipes, hand gels, things like that, obviously AEDs, we're here. And, you know, a lot of good questions on the ATMOSAIR too, which was expected. You know, we're here to help you with that too. So thank you, Team Life. Really appreciate you here today. And thank you to all our attendees. And we will see you next week where we have 3 SAGEs. We're going to dive into a little bit more of the wellness and recovery and rejuvenation, which I think is appropriate as we're starting to see some more things open up. And it's a feel good type of thing. So thank you all once again, and we'll see you next week.